The blade was at my throat when I heard it, a small voice that shattered everything. "Mama!" The execution chamber fell silent. Stone walls that had witnessed 40 deaths held their breath for the 41st. Silver chains bit into my wrists where they hung from iron rings bolted to ancient rock. The drainage channel cut into the floor beneath my knees gleamed wet in torchlight, ready for my blood. Alpha King Theron stood behind me. His hand gripped my hair, tilting my head back to expose my throat. I could feel the tremor in his fingers, could smell the wolf musk rolling off him in waves of barely contained violence. His combat blade, the one he had carried through 20 years of territorial wars, pressed cold against my skin. I had been ready to die. Then the door crashed open. Asher, 4 years old and small for his age, burst into the chamber like a cannonball. His nightclothes hung loose on his thin frame. Silver eyes, the wolf sight that marked him as future alpha, were wide with recognition and terror. In his arms he clutched a wooden wolf, carved from oak, the only toy he truly loved. Guards scrambled after him. Gwyneth, his current nursemaid, appeared in the doorway with panic written across her face. "Your Majesty, I am sorry." He woke. He ran. I could not catch him. But Asher was not looking at her, was not looking at the guards positioned at 3 points around the chamber, crossbows loaded with silver bolts, was not looking at the witnesses, 12 pack members required by law to observe alpha justice. He was looking at me, at the woman kneeling in chains with a blade at her throat. "Mama," he said again, smaller this time, uncertain. Then he ran, straight through the kill box, past the drainage channel, around the witness gallery, small feet slapping on stone as he crossed the distance that separated us. "She is not your mother, Asher." Theron's voice cracked on his son's name. The blade pressed harder against my throat. I felt skin split, felt warmth trickle down to soak into the collar of my prison shift. But Asher kept coming. He crashed into my legs, wrapped his arms around my knees, buried his face against my thigh. The wooden wolf clattered to the floor between us. "You came back," he whispered into the fabric. "You came back, Weena." Theron's hand in my hair went rigid. I could feel the war happening inside him. Could feel it in the way his breathing changed, shallow and fast. Could feel it in the microscopic movements of the blade against my throat, pressing and releasing, as command fought, instinct fought something deeper. Behind me, his heart hammered so hard I could hear it. This was not supposed to happen. The execution was meant to be clean, swift, a necessary sacrifice to maintain pack stability, political theater to prove the Alpha King was not compromised by an Omega who had somehow wormed her way into his inner circle. 24 hours earlier, everything had been certain. Now nothing was. Asher looked up at his father. Silver eyes met silver eyes. 4-year-old facing down the most powerful alpha in 3 territories. "Why is Weena wearing chains, Papa?" His voice carried across the chamber, clear, steady. A child who had been taught to speak truth even when afraid. "Take them off. They are hurting her." Theron made a sound like a wounded animal. "Son, you need to go back to your room." "No." Asher's grip tightened on my legs. "Not without Weena. She reads to me. She makes the nightmares go away. She is—" His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow echoed louder than a shout. "She is like Mama. She makes it not hurt so much." I was going to shatter. Right there in the execution chamber with witnesses watching and my death seconds away, I was going to break into 1,000 pieces. Theron's hand released my hair. The blade left my throat. Metal clattered on stone as he dropped his weapon. I heard him move, felt him crouch beside us. His presence was enormous, all alpha power and barely leashed violence. But when he touched Asher's shoulder, his hand was gentle. "Asher," he said quietly, "look at me." Asher turned his head. Tears streaked his small face. "I cannot lose her too, Papa. I cannot. Everyone leaves. Mama left. Then Weena left. Everyone leaves me." It was the breaking point. I had watched Theron maintain composure through conspiracy trials, through political maneuvering, through the systematic destruction of my reputation. I had watched him order my arrest with a face like carved granite, had watched him pronounce sentence without a flicker of emotion. Now I watched the Alpha King shatter, his jaw clenched, his eyes closed. When he opened them again, they were wet. "She is not leaving," he said. His voice was raw, stripped of command, just a father trying to comfort his terrified son. "She is not leaving." He stood abruptly, turned to face Gwyneth. "Take the boy out." "No!" Asher's scream split the air. "Weena, do not let them take her, Papa, please!" Guards moved forward. Gwyneth reached for Asher. He fought like a wild thing, all flailing limbs and desperate strength. "Mama!" he screamed. "Mama, do not go!" That word, Mama. It echoed through the execution chamber long after the door closed behind them. Long after Asher's screams faded to silence, long after the only sounds were breathing and the guttering of torches and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Theron stood frozen, back to me, shoulders shaking. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. "He called you Mama. He has never, not since Liana died, not once in 2 years. I did not encourage it," I said quickly. "I never tried to replace her. I made sure he knew about his birth mother, about the lavender fields, about how she watches from the stars. I know." He turned to face me. His eyes were red. His face was wet. This was not the cold Alpha King who had pronounced my death sentence. This was just a man, broken, desperate. "I know you did not try to replace her. You loved him purely, without agenda, without wanting anything in return. You gave him what I could not, what I have been too damaged to give him." He crossed the distance between us in 3 strides. "And I am executing you for it." He dropped to his knees, reached for the silver chains binding my wrists. His hands shook as he worked the locks. "What are you doing?" I whispered. "Something I should have done weeks ago. Choosing truth over politics, choosing my son over my crown." The first chain fell away. He moved to the second. "The court will challenge you, your authority. Let them question it. Let them challenge me. I will face 100 rebellions before I kill an innocent woman my son loves." The second chain clattered to the floor. He looked at me, really looked at me. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw the man I had come to know, the one who appeared in doorways during bedtime stories, who asked quiet questions about his son's progress, who once stood with me under stars and talked about hope. "Before I kill the woman who taught me how to be a father again." His hands cupped my face, gentle despite their trembling. "I was a coward, Alara. You were right. I let politics and fear make my decisions. I let them convince me that acknowledging you, acknowledging what you mean to this family, would make me weak." He shook his head. "But watching my son scream for you, knowing I was about to destroy the one stable thing in his life, that is weakness. That is cowardice." The door burst open. Beta Corvus stormed in with 3 guards at his back. His face was purple with rage. "Your Majesty, what is the meaning of this?" He saw me, freed, unchained, Theron's hands still on my face. "You cannot be serious. The Omega is sentenced. The court decided." "The court decided based on fabricated evidence." Theron stood, stepped between Corvus and me. His voice had gone cold, hard, pure alpha command. "Evidence I am now questioning. Guards, arrest Beta Corvus." "On what charge?" "Conspiracy to commit fraud, witness tampering, for a start." Corvus's eyes widened. "You have no proof." "I have Gareth's testimony. He saw you threaten Morena in the East Garden. Heard you tell her that if she did not know her place, you would make sure she regretted it." Theron stepped forward. "I have financial records showing payments to 3 of the witnesses. I have a letter, God's help you, that you actually wrote down, instructing Lady Selene on how to handle the Omega problem." My mind reeled. "You knew," I said. "All this time, you knew." "I suspected." He glanced at me. I needed proof. And I needed to see how far they would go, what they would do. His jaw clenched. I thought I could control it, manage it quietly. I was wrong. He did not finish. Did not need to. The guards moved toward Corvus. The Beta backed away, hand going to his blade. "Your Majesty, you are making a grave mistake. The Pack will never accept an Omega as your—" He cut himself off. But we all knew what he had been about to say, what everyone had been whispering, that the Alpha King had feelings for the low-born nursemaid, that his judgment was compromised, that he watched me with his son and something had shifted in the careful distance he maintained. Looking at Theron now, seeing how he positioned himself protectively in front of me, how his hands had trembled removing my chains, how he had shattered when Asher called me Mama, I realized the whispers were true. "Take him to the cells," Theron ordered, "and bring Lady Selene in for questioning." As the guards dragged Corvus away, I found my voice. "Your son needs you. He is terrified." "He needs us," Theron corrected gently. "If you are willing to stay, after everything I have done, I am not going anywhere," I said firmly. Relief flooded his features. "But we need to talk about boundaries, about what happens next, about what this is." "Tomorrow," he promised. "Tomorrow we talk about everything. Tonight we go to Asher." We found Asher in his chambers, curled up with Gwyneth, still crying. When he saw me in the doorway, his face transformed. "Weena!" He launched himself across the room. I caught him, held him tight while he sobbed into my shoulder. "I am here, sweetheart. I am here." "You are staying? Promise. Promise you will not leave." I looked at Theron over Asher's head. The Alpha King nodded once. "I promise," I said. "I'm not going anywhere." Theron moved closer, wrapped his arms around both of us. We stood there, the three of us, and something clicked into place. Not a perfect family, not a traditional one, but family nonetheless. Later, after Asher finally fell asleep between us in his too small bed, Theron whispered across his son's sleeping form, "I meant what I said. Tomorrow we figure out the rest, but tonight—" He reached across to take my hand. "Tonight I am just grateful you are alive." "Why did you really wait?" I asked quietly. "Why let it go so far?" He was silent for a long moment. "Because I wanted to see if you would run, if you would save yourself and abandon Asher. Part of me," he swallowed hard, "part of me wanted you to be guilty. Because if you were guilty, I could execute you and kill these feelings. I could go back to being the cold Alpha King who does not need anyone. But you did not run. You did not save yourself. Even when I gave you chances, even when Kale offered you escape, you stayed for my son." "For our son," I said softly. "He might not be mine by blood, but he is mine in every way that matters." Theron's hand tightened on mine. "And that is why I could not do it. Why I broke. Because watching you love my son with everything you have, even knowing it might kill you." His voice cracked. "That is what real love looks like, and I have been too damaged, too afraid to recognize it." "We are all damaged," I said, "all afraid. But maybe that is okay. Maybe we do not have to be perfect to be family." He nodded, eyes wet. We lay there in the darkness, listening to Asher breathe, holding hands across his small body. For the first time in months, I felt something I had almost forgotten: hope. But hope, I would learn, was only the beginning. The conspiracy went deeper than any of us imagined, and the war that was coming would test everything we had built, everything we believed, everything we were willing to sacrifice. 24 hours earlier, my story had been simple. Now I needed to go back, to the beginning, to explain how a low-born Omega came to kneel in chains before an Alpha King, how I came to love a child who was not mine, how I came to stand at the center of a storm that would reshape Pact territories. I needed to tell you about the trial. The trial happened in the war room, not the throne hall. That should have told me something. Stone walls mapped with territories conquered and defended over generations. Tactical displays showing pack positions, alliance structures, threat assessments marked in different colored stones. Battle flags hanging from iron hooks, each one representing a victory paid for in blood. This was not a place of political theater. This was where wars were planned, where strategies were forged, where difficult decisions happened behind closed doors. This was military tribunal. I knelt in the center of the room with silver chains burning through my wrists. The manacles were not ceremonial pieces worn for show during pack gatherings. They were combat-grade equipment, designed to suppress shifter strength completely, to make escape impossible even for the strongest alpha. They had held warriors 3 times my size, had bound prisoners who fought until their wrists bled, had witnessed confessions extracted through pain and patience. Now they held me. Around me, the pack's military leadership formed a semicircle. Not courtiers in fine dress, not politicians playing games of alliance and favor. Soldiers, warriors, men and women who had seen combat, who carried scars, who understood the weight of tactical decisions. Theron sat at the head of the table in full battle armor. Not the ceremonial plate he wore during festivals and formal gatherings. Working gear, the armor he had carried through 20 years of territorial wars, wolf-head pauldrons on his shoulders, teeth bared in eternal snarl, campaign medals across his chest, each one marking a battle survived, a victory won, a crisis overcome. The left pauldron bore a deep dent where a Northern Raider's axe had nearly taken his arm 10 years ago. The chest plate showed silver scoring where enemy claws had come within inches of his heart during the coastal incursion. This was not the king who presided over pack ceremonies with practiced grace. This was the war chief who had held the southern border when 3 packs tried to break through simultaneously, who had led the counteroffensive that pushed raiders back into their own territory, who had negotiated peace treaties with enemy blood still wet on his blade. Beta Corvus stood to his right. Younger than Theron by a decade, ambitious, with eyes that tracked power the way a wolf tracks wounded prey. He wore dress uniform, crisp and clean, without a single combat scar visible. The uniform of someone who commanded from safety, who gave orders but never bled for them. His medals were all ceremonial, political appointments, service awards given for time served, not battles won. I had noticed that the first day I arrived at the castle, had made a mental note. Field medics learned quickly which commanders had earned their positions through combat and which through connections. It mattered when you needed to trust someone's tactical judgment under fire. Lady Celine stood to the left, alpha born into one of the old bloodlines, bitter that her heritage had not produced the pack heir. Bitter that Lyanna, a wolf from a smaller pack with less prestigious lineage, had been chosen as Theron's mate instead of her own daughter. 2 years of quiet resentment since Lyanna's death. 2 years of positioning her daughter, now 4 years old like Asher, as the proper choice for grooming as future mate to continue the bloodlines. Her daughter was being taught courtly graces and political maneuvering. Asher had been taught by me to identify exits and count guards and understand that safety came from tactical awareness, not noble blood. Kael stood by the door. Theron's war brother, his second in every battle that mattered. Old scars crisscrossed his face like a map of survival, a slash across his left cheek from the Battle of Redstone Pass, a burn mark along his jaw from the Siege of Blackridge, missing the tip of his right ear from close-quarters combat during the Northern Campaign. Each scar a story, each story a lesson learned in blood. He watched me with eyes that gave nothing away. But I knew Kael, had served with him during the border wars, had saved his unit when they were pinned down by enemy forces, cut off from supply lines, bleeding out in a ravine while Northern scouts hunted them. I had crawled through enemy territory to reach them, had treated their wounds with supplies scavenged from dead soldiers, had helped them fight their way back to friendly lines. Kael remembered. I could see it in the way he stood, alert, ready, positioned by the door not as guard, but as potential extraction point. If this went completely wrong, if Theron lost control of the tribunal, Kael would move, would create chaos, would give me a chance to run. I hoped it would not come to that. The charges were read by the Pack's war scribe, an old female Omega with a voice like gravel and eyes that had seen too much death. She had been recording military tribunals for 40 years, had witnessed hundreds of trials, had written the death sentences of warriors, traitors, cowards, and heroes. Her hand never shook when she marked the parchment. Her voice never wavered when she read the verdict. Now she read my charges. Not by Corvus, as I had expected. The formality mattered. This was military justice, not political maneuvering. Elara Sorrel, daughter, you stand accused of military treason, conspiracy to assassinate the heir, providing intelligence to enemy packs, sabotaging territorial defenses. She paused. Let the words settle into the stone walls. Let the weight of them press down on everyone present. These are capital offenses. If found guilty, the sentence is death, immediate, witnessed by military tribunal as prescribed by pack law. How do you answer? I should have stayed silent, should have kept my eyes down, should have played the role they expected. But I had never been good at expectations. I answer that you are charging a decorated veteran with crimes she did not commit, that someone in this room is lying, and that the real traitor is counting on you being too blind to see it. The room exploded. Voices shouted for immediate execution, for enhanced interrogation, for me to be gagged and dragged back to the cells. Theron raised one hand. Silence fell like a guillotine. He stood, descended from his chair slowly, deliberately. When he reached me, he crouched down until we were eye to eye. Up close, I could see the sleeplessness etched into his face, the silver threading through his dark hair that had not been there 6 months ago, the weight of command that sat on his shoulders like physical armor. You should have run, he said, so low only I could hear. When I gave you the chance, when Kael offered you extraction. Why did you not run, Elara? Because I did not do what you are accusing me of, and because someone needs to stay and protect Asher from whatever game is being played here. His expression hardened. He stood, turned to the assembly. Present the evidence. Corvus stepped forward with a cloth-wrapped bundle. He laid it on the table with theatrical precision, unwrapped it to reveal a collection of items. These were found in the accused's quarters during a lawful search. He held up a small glass vial. Poison. Wolfsbane extract, concentrated enough to kill an adult shifter, more than enough to kill a child. Gasps around the room. He held up a piece of parchment covered in symbols. Coded message. Our cipher experts have analyzed it. It matches Northern Pack military encryption. More gasps. He held up a detailed sketch, map of our southern defensive positions, showing weak points, guard rotations, supply caches, everything an invading force would need to breach our borders. The room erupted again. I stared at the evidence, my mind racing. The vial was mine. I was a field medic. I kept medical supplies. Wolfsbane was standard issue for treating certain injuries, for putting down mortally wounded warriors with mercy. The message was foreign. I had never seen it before. The map was mine, but not for the reasons they claimed. Corvus was not finished. We have witnesses, 3 pack members who will testify under oath that they saw the accused engaging in suspicious behavior, asking questions about pack security, spending time near strategic locations, meeting with unknown individuals in the forest. He turned to face me. We have evidence that you are not who you claim to be, that your background, your credentials, your entire story is a fabrication designed to infiltrate this pack. That much was true. But not the way he meant it. Theron's voice cut through the noise. What is your defense? I met his eyes. My defense is that evidence can be planted, witnesses can be bought, and that whoever framed me did a sloppy job. Explain. The vial is mine. I am a field medic. Every medic carries Wolfsbane. Check the concentration. It is standard medical grade, not assassination grade. If I wanted to poison someone, I would not use something so easily traced. I nodded at the coded message. I have never seen that parchment before, but I notice it was found in my quarters. Anyone with access could have placed it there. Have you checked for fingerprints, for scent markers, or did you just assume guilt? Murmurs around the room. The map is mine. I drew it, but not to help invaders, to identify weaknesses in our defenses that need to be addressed. Your southern border is vulnerable. I was trying to help fix it. Corvus laughed. And how would a low-born Omega nursemaid know anything about military defenses? That, I said quietly, is an excellent question. I looked at Theron. Perhaps you should tell them the truth, about who I really am, about why you hired me. The room went silent. Theron stood motionless for 3 heartbeats. Then he nodded to Kale. Bring the files, all of them. Kale disappeared, returned moments later with a leather case. He placed it on the table in front of Theron. The Alpha King opened it, removed a thick folder. Before we continue this tribunal, he said, you will hear the truth. He held up the first document. Captain Alara Sorrel Daughter, 12 years military intelligence, border wars, coastal incursion, northern campaign, shocked silence, decorated for valor, 30 soldiers saved through tactical medical intervention, expert in field medicine, strategic analysis, and counterintelligence operations. He held up another document. Honorably discharged 3 years ago following severe injury, right leg shattered in combat, spent 18 months in recovery, medically cleared for light duty only. He looked around the room. I hired her personally, under false identity, because my son was dying inside, and I needed someone with the spine to drag him back to life, someone who understood trauma, who had seen death and survived it. He turned to me. She is not who she claimed to be. That much is true, but she is not a spy. She is a war hero who wanted a quiet life, and I gave her that life in exchange for saving my son. The room erupted in chaos. Corvus's face had gone pale. Lady Selene looked like she had been struck, because everything that they had built, every accusation, every carefully planted piece of evidence, now looked different through this lens. A Omega nursemaid with suspicious tactical knowledge was a spy. A decorated military intelligence officer with tactical knowledge was an asset. The evidence had not changed, but the context had. And in that moment, I saw Corvus realize he had made a critical mistake. Theron was not finished. So the question is this: who framed a war hero as a spy? Who planted evidence in her quarters? Who bribed witnesses to testify against her? He leaned forward. And why now? What change that made her a target? I knew the answer. They all knew the answer. But no one wanted to say it. Asher had started calling me Weena, short for Alara, because his 4-year-old tongue could not wrap around the full name. He had started asking for me when he woke from nightmares, had started smiling again, laughing again, living again. And Theron had started watching, had started appearing during bedtime stories, had started asking questions, had started looking at me like I was something more than staff. Nothing had happened, nothing physical, nothing that broke propriety. But something had grown between us in those quiet evenings, something dangerous. And someone had noticed. Someone who wanted me gone before it went further. Someone who had a vested interest in keeping the Alpha King isolated, grieving, controllable. I looked at Corvus, at Selene, saw guilt written in their faces. But this was military tribunal, not civilian court. Guilt required proof. Theron seemed to read my mind. Kale, he said quietly, your report. Kale stepped forward. Over the past 3 weeks, I have been conducting an investigation at the Alpha King's request, following the money, tracking the witnesses, analyzing the evidence. He produced his own folder. Witness 1, Marcus Greyfang, received 50 silver pieces 2 days before he claimed to see the accused near the war room. The payment came from an account registered to Beta Corvus. Corvus started to object. Kale kept talking. Witness 2, Sarah Moonwhisper, received 70 silver pieces the same day. Same source. Witness 3, Thomas Nightrunner, received 60 silver pieces plus a promotion to senior scout. Again, same source. He held up a piece of parchment. This is a letter from Beta Corvus to Lady Selene, dated 1 week before the accusations began. I quote, "The Omega problem must be handled delicately. We cannot act openly. But if evidence were to surface, if witnesses were to come forward, the Alpha King would have no choice but to act." End quote. The room had gone deadly silent. Kale continued. The coded message found in the accused's quarters uses Northern military cipher, but the usage is incorrect. Amateur mistakes that no trained operative would make. The kind of mistakes someone would make if they were copying from a reference manual without understanding proper application. He looked at Corvus. I found the manual in Beta Corvus's office, with annotations in his handwriting. Corvus exploded. This is fabrication, political maneuvering. I am Beta of this pack. I have served loyally for 15 years. And you are also ambitious, Theron said quietly. You have made no secret that you believe Lady Selene's daughter should be groomed as my next mate, that her son should be positioned as heir. He stood. You saw Alara becoming important to Asher, saw her becoming important to me, and you decided to eliminate the threat before it grew. That is not... I have your letters, Corvus. I have the payment records. I have 3 witnesses who will testify that you coached them on what to say. Theron's voice went cold. You did not just try to frame an innocent woman. You tried to execute a veteran, someone who served this pack with honor. He stepped closer. That is not political maneuvering. That is treason. Guards, arrest Beta Corvus. The guards moved. Corvus backed away, hand on his blade. For a moment I thought he would fight. Thought this would end in blood. Then his shoulders sagged. The guards took him. As they dragged him toward the door, Theron called out, "One more thing. During your interrogation, we will be asking about your contacts with Alpha Aldrich, about the Northern Scouts who were seen entering your territory, about the very convenient timing of these accusations just as Aldrich begins mobilizing his forces." Corvus's eyes went wide with panic, and I understood. This was not just about removing me. This was about something bigger. The door closed behind Corvus. Theron turned to Lady Selene. Your involvement will be investigated separately. For now, you are confined to your quarters. Guards will be posted. Selene's face had gone white. She said nothing as the guards escorted her out. When they were gone, Theron dismissed the tribunal. Everyone except Kale and myself. The 3 of us stood in the empty war room. You knew, I said again, all of it. You knew from the beginning. Not from the beginning. Theron sank into his chair like a man carrying the weight of mountains. I suspected after this first witness came forward. The story was too perfect, too convenient. I have been a soldier long enough to recognize a frame job. So you arrested me anyway, because I needed them to commit, needed them to show their full hand. If I had moved too early, they would have gone underground, waited, tried again when I was not watching. He looked at me. I gambled with your life to catch them completely. That was wrong. But it was the tactical call I made. And if you had been wrong, if they had been more careful, if you had not found proof in time, then I would have stopped the execution, faced the political consequences, dealt with the fallout. He stood, crossed to me, unlocked the silver chains still binding my wrists. They fell to the floor. I would not have let you die, Alara, never that. You came very close. I know. His voice was barely a whisper. Believe me, I know. We stood there. 2 soldiers who understood the cost of tactical decisions, who understood that sometimes you sacrifice pieces to win the game. But this had not been a game. This had been my life, and his son's happiness. And something else, something neither of us had named yet. Kale cleared his throat. There is more. The Northern connection. Corvus has been in contact with Alpha Aldrich for months, sharing intelligence, weakening our defenses, setting up the conditions for invasion. How deep does it go? Theron's voice had gone hard again. Professional. Deeper than I thought. Aldrich has been planning this for over a year. He needed internal chaos to justify intervention, needed our pack weakened and divided. Kale produced another document. The assassination attempt on Asher was real. The poison in his system was not fever. It was low-grade toxin, administered over time. Not enough to kill quickly, just enough to make him sick, to create the appearance of assassination attempt. My blood went cold. Someone was poisoning Asher? Lady Selene had access to the nursery. And motive. If Asher died during a succession crisis, if you were discredited, Aldrich could invade claiming to restore order, Theron finished. Install a puppet ruler, probably Selene's daughter and grandson. He slammed his fist on the table. They used my son as bait, poisoned him to create chaos, and I almost played right into their hands. But you did not, I said quietly. You found proof. You stopped it. Barely. He looked at me, and I almost killed the one person who could help me protect him. Because I was the threat to their plan, I realized. If I stayed close to Asher, I would notice the poisoning. My medical training would catch what others missed, so they had to remove me first. Exactly. Cale nodded. You were the unknown variable, the veteran with skills they had not accounted for. They tried to eliminate you before you could interfere. Did it work? I asked. Did they succeed in poisoning him enough to cause damage? Cale hesitated. The healers are examining him now. We will know more soon. I have to go to him. Soon, Theron said. First, we need to finish this. Corvus and Selene are just the beginning. We need to know how deep this goes. Who else is compromised? He looked at Cale. Increase security around Asher. Triple the guard. No one gets access without my direct approval. And I mean no one. Already done. Good. Theron turned back to me. I know you have questions. About why I hired you. About what I knew. About what happens next. Later, I said. Right now I need to see Asher. Need to make sure he is safe. He is. I promise you he is. But I could see in Theron's eyes that he needed the same reassurance. Needed to see his son alive and whole. Needed to hold him and know the poison had not won. We went together. Found Asher in his chambers with healers hovering. He was awake, playing with his wooden wolf, looking small in his too-big bed. When he saw me, he smiled. Weena, you are back. I am back, sweetheart. I crossed to him, sat on the edge of his bed, let him climb into my lap. Are you staying this time? Over my shoulder, I met Theron's eyes. Yes, I said, I am staying. Good. Asher settled against me. I missed you. The new lady was mean. She told me to stop crying. She is gone now, Theron said quietly. She will not be back. He pulled up a chair, sat beside us. We stayed like that for a long time. The three of us. A broken family learning how to be whole. Outside, night fell over the Packlands. Tomorrow would bring more revelations, more confrontations, more pieces of the conspiracy revealed. But tonight we had this moment of peace. This quiet certainty that whatever came next, we would face it together. I looked down at Asher, already drowsing in my arms, looked up at Theron, watching his son with fierce protectiveness, and I understood. This was not about romance. This was not about political advancement. This was about survival, about protecting a child who had lost too much, about two damaged warriors finding strength in shared purpose, about family, chosen rather than born. The execution chamber had been the breaking point, but the story had started long before. Started with a hiring decision made in desperation. Started with a child who would not smile and a woman who understood trauma. Started with quiet evenings and careful distance and the slow erosion of walls built from grief. I needed to tell you about those nights, about how I came to love a boy who was not mine, about how I came to stand beside an alpha king, about the moments that led us to that execution chamber, to the blade at my throat, to a 4-year-old crying mama, to everything that came after. But that story would have to wait. Because at that moment, in the healer's quarters, with Asher sleeping in my lap and Theron's hand warm on my shoulder, the only thing that mattered was this. We had survived. The conspiracy was exposed. The traitors were captured. And tomorrow, we would begin the work of healing what had been broken. Tomorrow, we would prepare for the war that was surely coming. Tomorrow, we would figure out what we were to each other. But tonight, we were simply 3 people holding on to each other in the darkness. And that was enough. 3 days after the execution chamber, I woke to the sound of bells. Not ceremonial bells, not the gentle chimes that marked dawn prayers or evening gatherings. Alarm bells, the kind that meant blood was coming. I was out of bed before conscious thought, battle reflexes taking over. 12 years of military service did not leave you just because you retired. Your body remembered, your instincts remembered, even when your mind tried to forget. The medical wing where I had been recovering was 3 corridors from the nursery. I knew because I had mapped the castle within a week of arrival. Old habits. Always know your exits. Always count the distance to what matters most. Asher was in the nursery. I ran, bare feet on cold stone, still in the loose shirt they had given me to sleep in, my right leg screaming where the old injury flared, the leg that had been shattered in the Northern Campaign. That had taken 18 months to heal. That would never be the same. I ignored the pain, ran faster. The corridors were chaos, warriors mobilizing, servants fleeing to interior rooms, someone shouting orders about defensive positions and sealed doors and protecting the civilians. I rounded a corner and nearly crashed into Kyle. He was in full battle armor, sword drawn, blood already on the blade. "The nursery," I gasped. "Is Asher?" "Safe room protocol initiated, but we have infiltrators, Northern scouts. 12 of them breached the walls." He grabbed my arm. "Theron is in the throne room engaging 4. I am holding this corridor with 8 warriors. You need to get to the safe room, now." "Where is the safe room?" "East Tower, 3rd level, behind the tapestry of the summer hunt." I knew it, had memorized it, had made Asher practice the route twice disguised as games. How many scouts between here and there? Unknown. At least 2 reported near the nursery wing. "Then I am going." Cale started to object. I cut him off. "I am a combat veteran. I know how to fight. And that boy needs someone who can protect him, not just hide with him." For a moment we locked eyes, veteran to veteran. He released my arm. "There are weapons in the armory, 2 doors down on your left. Take what you need." He pressed something into my hand, a key. "For the safe room door. No one gets through it without this. Not even Theron." I closed my fist around it. "Thank you." He was already moving, calling orders to his warriors, setting up a defensive position to hold the corridor. I ran to the armory, found it unlocked. Someone had already been here. Weapons scattered on the floor. I grabbed what I could use, a short blade, silver-edged, good for close quarters, a longer knife for my belt. No crossbow. I had never been good with ranged weapons. Field medics fought up close, where we could see our targets bleed. I left the armory and headed for the nursery. The first scout found me in the corridor outside the children's wing. He was young, maybe 20. Light armor built for speed. Northern pack markings on his shoulder. The twin ravens marking Aldrich's elite infiltration units. His eyes went wide when he saw me. An Omega. Alone. Barefoot. Unarmed as far as he could tell. Easy prey. He smiled, the predatory grin of a wolf who had already tasted victory. "You should be hiding, little Omega." I said nothing, just watched him, calculating. Taller, stronger, faster in wolf form. But he had made 3 mistakes. First, assuming I was helpless. Second, wasting time talking. Third, positioning himself in a narrow corridor where size worked against him. Amateur. I shifted weight to my good leg, felt the silver blade cold against my palm, hidden behind my back. The scout shifted to wolf form mid-stride, gray fur rippling, yellow eyes locked on my throat, teeth bared. Fast, smooth, well-practiced. But transformation takes a heartbeat, where balance shifts, where the mind is caught between human and wolf. I had fought wolves for 12 years. I knew that heartbeat intimately. I waited until he was 3 meters away, close enough that he had committed, too close to change direction. Then I moved. Not away, toward. I stepped inside his attack arc, too close for his jaws to reach. His momentum carried him past. I spun with his motion, brought the silver blade down across his exposed flank. Where ribs met spine, where organs were vulnerable, where a field medic knew to cut for maximum damage. The blade parted fur and flesh. Blood sprayed hot. The wolf yelped. Back legs gave out. He crashed into the wall. Impact forced him to shift back. Human form tangled with wolf instincts, blood pooling fast. I was on him before his eyes could focus. Knee on his chest, blade at his throat. "Who sent you?" Wide eyes. Shocked. He had expected helpless Omega, found killer instead. He spat blood. "Alpha Aldrich sends his regards. Your pack dies tonight. Your pups die." "How many more?" He smiled despite the pain. "Enough. More than enough." I increased pressure. Skin split. Blood trickled. "Where are the others positioned?" His smile widened. "Find out yourself when they are ripping your guts out." I looked into his eyes, saw fanaticism, Northern pack bred scouts for loyalty, for willingness to die rather than betray. No time for prolonged interrogation. Children were at risk. Asher was at risk. I leaned close. "You made a mistake coming here." The blade opened his throat, clean, carotid severed. He tried to speak. Blood filled his mouth instead. His hands scrabbled at my wrists, weak, fading. I watched his eyes dim, watched him become meat instead of threat. Then I stood. My leg buckled. I caught the wall, breathed through pain, looked at the spreading blood, at my red hands. 3 years retired, 3 years done with killing. Now it felt like yesterday. I took his weapons, Belt knife, better balanced. Small crossbow with 6 bolts. His boots fit, barely, better than bare feet. I pulled them on, tied them quick. Then kept moving. The nursery was ahead. I could hear crying. Gwyneth trying to soothe. I pushed open the door. The room was destroyed, furniture overturned, tapestries torn, signs of a fight. Gwyneth stood in the center with 3 other nursemaids. They had formed a defensive circle around the children. 5 little ones, including Asher. All of them alive, all terrified. "Weena!" Asher broke from the circle, ran to me. I caught him, held him for 3 seconds, long enough to feel his heartbeat, to smell his hair, to know he was whole. Then I set him down. "Are you hurt?" "No. The bad wolf came, but Gwyneth fought him. She has a knife and she stabbed him and he ran away." I looked at Gwyneth, saw blood on her hands, on her dress, a deep scratch across her face. "Where did he go?" "Toward the east wing, the safe room." My blood went cold. "He is going to block our route." I turned to the nursemaids. "How many of you can fight?" Gwyneth raised her hand. So did one other, a young beta female named Sarah. "Good. Take the children. Head for the safe room. I will go ahead and clear the path." Gwyneth shook her head. "You cannot take a scout alone. I just killed one in the corridor outside. I can handle this." I met her eyes. "Get the children to safety. That is your mission. Mine is to make sure nothing stops you." She hesitated, then nodded. We moved as a unit, me in front, Gwyneth and Sarah in the middle with the children, the other nursemaids at the rear. The East Wing corridor was long, straight, no cover. Tactically a nightmare. I scanned for threats, listened for movement, watched the shadows. Halfway down the corridor, I caught the scent. "Wolf, close." I raised my hand. The group stopped. "Stay here," I whispered. "Stay quiet. If I do not come back in 5 minutes, run for the throne room. Find Theron." "Weena, no." Asher's voice, small and scared. I crouched down, looked him in the eyes. "Remember what I taught you about being brave?" He nodded. "Brave means doing what is necessary even when you are scared. I am scared right now, but I am going anyway because you need me to." I touched his cheek. "So you be brave too. Stay with Gwyneth. Do exactly what she says. Can you do that for me?" "Yes." "Good boy." I stood, moved forward, found the scout in the next corridor. He was waiting by the tapestry that hid the safe room entrance, blocking it. This one was older, scarred, a veteran. He saw me coming and shifted immediately. No words, no posturing, just violence. He came fast, low to the ground, trying to get under my guard and take out my legs. I jumped back, slashed with the blade, caught his shoulder but not deep enough. He spun, came again, jaws snapping for my throat. I used the wall, kept my back to it so he could not flank, kept the blade moving in a defensive pattern. He was stronger, faster in wolf form. But I had fought wolves before, knew their patterns, knew their tells. He lunged high, I dropped low, drove the blade up into his exposed belly. Silver sank deep. He howled, thrashed, tried to bite even as blood poured from the wound. I twisted the blade, pulled it free, struck again, this time for the heart. He collapsed. I stood over him, breathing hard, legs screaming, hands shaking from adrenaline. 2 down. I went back for the group, led them to the safe room, moved the tapestry, found the door, used Kale's key. It opened onto a small stone chamber, reinforced walls, iron door, supplies for a week, designed to keep the air alive through a siege. "Get inside," I said. "Lock it from within. Do not open it for anyone except Theron or Kale, not even me." "You are not coming?" Gwyneth asked. "I am going back. There are still 10 scouts in the castle. I need to help eliminate them." She grabbed my arm. "You are wounded." I looked down, saw blood on my side. The first scout had gotten closer than I thought. A slash across my ribs. Not deep, but bleeding freely. "It will hold." I pulled away. "Protect the children, that is all that matters." I shoved Asher gently toward Gwyneth. He looked at me with those silver eyes, wolf sight active, seeing more than a child should see. "You are coming back," he said. Not a question, a command. "I am coming back," I promised. The door closed. I heard the bolt slide home. Then I was alone in the corridor with 2 dead scouts in a castle full of violence. I should have gone to the throne room, found Theron, reported the children secure and let the warriors handle the rest. But I had been a soldier too long to walk away from a fight. And there were still threats in this castle. Still enemies hunting my pack. I checked my weapons. Blade slick with blood but functional. Belt knife ready. Crossbow with 5 bolts remaining. Then I went hunting. The sounds of combat drew me toward the main hall. Steel on steel, snarling, the wet sounds of flesh tearing. I found Kael and his warriors engaged with 6 scouts. The corridor was a slaughterhouse. 3 northern wolves down. 2 shadow pack warriors down. The fight was brutal, close quarters, no room for tactics, just survival. I raised the crossbow, aimed for the scout farthest from Kyle's position. Released. The bolt took him in the throat. He went down gurgling. Kale's head snapped around. Saw me. His eyes widened. Then he grinned. Welcome to the party, Captain. The use of my old rank steadied something in me, made the chaos make sense. I was not a nursemaid fighting above her station. I was a soldier doing what soldiers do. I dropped the crossbow, drew both blades, moved into the fight. The scouts had not expected resistance from an Omega, had not expected someone who fought like a veteran. Their mistake. I took down the next one with a slash to the hamstring, followed by a blade through the spine. Quick, efficient, the way I had been trained. Kael and his warriors pressed the advantage, working as a unit, covering each other, taking down the remaining scouts with practiced efficiency. When it was over, 6 northern wolves lay dead. 3 Shadow Pack warriors stood wounded but alive, and I stood in the center of it all, breathing hard, covered in blood that was not all my own. Kael approached, looked me up and down. You fight well for someone who has been out of the field for 3 years. You never really leave the field, I said. It follows you. He nodded, understanding in a way only another veteran could. Asher? Safe room, secured. Gwyneth and the others are with him. Good. He wiped blood from his blade. Theron is still engaged in the throne room. 4 scouts. He needs backup. Then let us go. We ran. Found the throne room doors barred from inside, sounds of combat echoing through the wood. Kael slammed his shoulder into the door. It held. Again. This time it cracked. 3rd time it gave way. We burst through to chaos. Theron, in full alpha fury, shifted to wolf form, massive, black fur matted with blood, fighting 3 scouts while a 4th lay dead at his feet. But he was tiring. I could see it in his movements, could see the blood loss from a dozen wounds, could see him slowing. The scouts saw it too, pressed their advantage, circling, looking for the killing strike. Kael roared a battle cry, charged the nearest scout, blade high, drew his attention away from Theron. I went for the one on the right, the one positioning for a strike at Theron's exposed flank. He saw me coming, shifted to human, drew a blade to match mine, smiled. Little Omega wants to play soldier? I did not waste breath on a response, just attacked. He was good, better than the others, trained, disciplined. But I had been fighting wolves when he was still learning to shift. Our blades met, slid apart, met again, a dance of steel and silver. He tried to use his strength, overpower me with raw force. I used his momentum, redirected, let him overextend. When he lunged, I sidestepped, brought my blade across his exposed side, felt it bite deep between ribs. He gasped, staggered. I finished it with a thrust to the heart. He fell. I turned to help Kael, found him standing over his own kill, both of us breathing hard, both bleeding from multiple wounds. Theron had the last scout by the throat, wolf jaws clamped tight, crushing. The scout struggled, weakened, went still. Theron released, shifted back to human. Stood naked and blood covered in the center of his throne room. Report, he said, voice rough from the shift. Children secure, Kael said. 12 infiltrators confirmed, all eliminated. Casualties on our side, 5 warriors dead, 11 wounded. The castle is secure. Theron's eyes found me, took in the blood, the weapons, the way I stood like a soldier reporting after combat. You fought. I killed 3, I said, wounded 1 that Kael's unit finished. His expression shifted, something like pride. Something like pain. You should not have had to. I am a soldier, I said quietly. It is what we do. He moved toward me, stopped close enough that I could smell the blood and sweat and wolf musk rolling off him. You saved my son. Gwyneth and the nursemaid saved your son. I just cleared the path. A servant appeared with robes. Theron took them, covered himself. Then he pulled me into an embrace. Unexpected, fierce. I stood rigid for a moment, then relaxed. Let myself feel the relief, the exhaustion, the crash that comes after combat when the adrenaline fades and you realize you are still alive. Thank you, he said into my hair. Thank you for protecting him. Always, I said, and meant it. The interrogation of the captured scout happened in the war room. One of Kael's warriors had taken a northern wolf alive, wounded him enough to prevent shifting, bound him in silver chains. Now he knelt in the center of the room while we stood around him. Theron, Kael, myself, Elder Rowan, the war scribe. Theron crouched in front of the scout. Spoke quietly, calmly, like he was discussing the weather. Your mission failed. Your team is dead. You are going to die here. The only question is how much pain comes first. The scout spat blood. I will tell you nothing. That is your right. Theron stood, nodded to Kael. Bring in Lady Selene. They dragged her in. Chained, gagged, her elegant dress torn and bloody. The scout's eyes widened. We found correspondence in her chambers, Theron said. Letters to Alpha Aldrich, detailing our defensive positions, our patrol routes, our weaknesses. He held up a piece of parchment. This one is particularly interesting. It describes the layout of the nursery wing, the best approach vectors for an assassination team, guard rotations, safe room location. The scout had gone pale. She gave you everything you needed to kill my son. In exchange for what? A promise of position when Aldrich conquered us? Theron crouched again, met the scout's eyes. Here is what is going to happen. I am going to have Lady Selene executed for treason. Slowly, in front of the entire pack. And before she dies, she is going to confess everything. He paused. Or you can tell me what I want to know, and I will make her death quick. Mercy for cooperation. The scout looked at Selene. She was shaking her head frantically behind the gag. What do you want to know? Theron smiled, cold, predatory. Everything. The scout talked for 2 hours. Told us about the plan, how it had been building for over a year, how Aldrich had been looking for a way to justify invading Shadowpact territory, how he had found willing collaborators in Corvus and Selene. The strategy had been elegant in its cruelty. Phase 1. Poison Asher slowly. Make it look like illness. Create the appearance of assassination attempts. Phase 2. Frame someone close to the boy. Ideally, someone the Alpha King had started to trust. Someone whose execution would create internal division. Phase 3. Remove the scapegoat. Destabilize the pack leadership. Make Theron look weak or compromised. Phase 4. Asher dies from the accumulated poison. Succession crisis. Pack in chaos. Phase 5. Aldrich invades. Claims he is restoring order. Installing proper leadership. Absorbing shadow territory into his own. The poisoning had been Selene's work. She had access, had motive, had the knowledge. The frame job had been Corvus's work. He had the position, the authority, the political connections. The invasion was Aldrich's work. He had the army, the ambition, the willingness to sacrifice honor for power, and I had been the perfect target. Lowborn Omega, no political protection, close to both Theron and Asher, trusted enough to hurt them, vulnerable enough to remove. They had almost succeeded. When did the invasion begin? Theron asked. Tonight. The scout team was advance force, meant to kill the air and open the gates. Main army is 6 hours behind. They expected to march in and find you dealing with internal chaos. How many warriors? 600, plus auxiliaries. Theron's jaw clenched. We have 400. The room went silent. Those were not winning odds. Not in a straight fight. What are our options? Elder Rowan asked. Theron looked at the territorial map spread across the table. We can retreat to the inner keep, make them siege us. We have supplies for 2 months. Cale shook his head. Aldrich will not siege. He will assault. Overwhelm us with numbers. We lose. We can call for aid from allied packs. By the time they arrive, we will be dead. Theron slammed his fist on the table. Then what do you suggest? I cleared my throat. All eyes turned to me. You do not fight a straight fight, I said quietly. You fight a smart fight. I moved to the map, pointed to the southern border. Aldrich is coming from the north. Expect him to hit here. But the terrain favors defense. Narrow passes, choke points. If we fortify these positions, we can hold with fewer numbers. Theron studied the map. For how long? Long enough. You are not trying to win a battle. You are trying to change the strategic situation. Explain. I pointed to the surrounding territories. Western Pack, Coastal Pack, Eastern Pack, all currently neutral. They are watching to see what Aldrich does. If he invades you without provocation, unprovoked aggression against an established pack, he looks like the aggressor. They might intervene. Cale leaned forward. But if we lose too quickly, they will see it as inevitable. We'll not risk supporting a losing cause. Exactly. So we do not lose quickly. We make him bleed, make it costly, drag it out long enough that other alphas start questioning whether Aldrich is worth supporting. I traced defensive positions on the map. Layered defenses, fighting withdrawal, guerrilla raids on supply lines, force him into a siege he does not want. Make it politically untenable for him to continue. Elder Rowan nodded slowly. Defensive warfare. We do not try to beat him militarily. We beat him politically. And if that does not work, Theron asked, then we lose. But we lose having made him pay in blood for every inch. We lose having shown the other packs what kind of alpha Aldrich really is. We lose having protected our civilians long enough for some of them to escape. I met his eyes. Sometimes the best you can do is make the enemy regret winning. The room was silent. Then Theron nodded. KL, mobilize all warriors. Defensive positions on the southern border. I want fortifications up by dawn. Done. Elder Rowan, get the civilians into the inner keep. Emergency supplies, lockdown protocols. Already underway. He turned to me. You will coordinate the defensive strategy. Work with Kale on positioning. I need your tactical mind on this. I am not a command officer. I was field medic and intelligence. You are a decorated veteran who just outlined a winning strategy. That makes you qualified. He stepped closer. I am making you war counselor, temporary rank, full authority to make tactical decisions in consultation with military leadership. The room stirred. An Omega as war counselor was unprecedented. Theron ignored them. Do you accept? I looked at the map, at the impossible odds, at the coming battle, at the chance to prove that an Omega could do more than nurture. Could lead, could fight, could win. I accept. Good. He turned to the scout. You cooperated. I will honor my word. Lady Celine dies quickly. Take him to the cells. He lives until this is over. Then we decide his fate. Guards dragged the scout away. Celine was pulled to her feet. Her gag was removed. She started screaming, begging, offering information, promising anything. Theron listened in silence. When she finished, he spoke. You poisoned my son, sold out your pack to invaders, conspired to kill an innocent woman. He stepped closer. You did this because you believed Omegas were weak, because you believed traditional hierarchy was more important than honor. His voice dropped. You are going to die knowing that an Omega helped design the strategy that saves this pack, that an Omega fought beside my warriors and killed your northern allies, that everything you believed was wrong. He nodded to the guards. Take her to the courtyard. Public execution. I want everyone to see what happens to traitors. Guards dragged her out, screaming. The execution happened at dawn. The entire pack gathered in the central courtyard, required attendance. Theron wanted everyone to see, wanted no doubt about the cost of treason. I stood beside him on the platform. War counselor, witness, the Omega who Celine had tried to destroy. The symbolism was not lost on anyone. Celine was brought out in chains, silver manacles on wrists and ankles, the execution dress, plain white linen that would show blood clearly, traditional for traitors. Her face was pale, eyes red from crying, but she held her head high. Alpha-born, noble lineage. Even at the end, she clung to dignity. Theron stepped forward, addressed the crowd. Lady Celine of the Moon Whisper line stands condemned of treason, conspiracy with enemy forces, attempted assassination of the heir, poisoning, fraud. His voice carried across the courtyard, hard, unforgiving. She is found guilty by her own correspondence, by her own words, by evidence that cannot be denied. He held up the letters. Let the pack see them. She sold our defensive positions to Alpha Aldrich. She poisoned my son over weeks. She conspired to kill an innocent woman to clear her path to power. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The sentence is death, immediate, witnessed by the pack. Celine was pushed forward, forced to her knees. Her gag was removed. She looked up at Theron, then at me. Hate burned in her eyes. You, she hissed. You are the abomination. An Omega playing at being a warrior, playing at being counselor. This pack will fall because you corrupt the natural order. I met her gaze, said nothing. Theron spoke. This pack will survive because warriors fight beside warriors, because competence matters more than birth rank, because we adapted when you clung to tradition. He moved to stand behind her. You could have served with honor, could have used your position to strengthen this pack. Instead, you chose ambition, chose to ally with our enemies, chose to poison a child. He drew his blade, the same one that had been at my throat days ago. You deserve no mercy, but I will give you a clean death, because I am not Northern Pack. I do not torture my enemies. Celine started to speak. The blade came down. Fast, clean decapitation in one stroke. Her head hit the platform, rolled. Her body slumped. Blood pooled dark and spreading. The pack was silent. Theron cleaned his blade, sheathed it, turned to face them. This is the price of treason. This is what happens when you betray your pack, when you sell out your alpha, when you harm the innocent for personal gain. He paused. Let them absorb it. Let this be the last execution I have to order. Let this be the end of internal enemies, because we have enough external threats without fighting each other. He gestured to me. War Counselor Ilara will coordinate our defense against the invasion. She has my full authority, my complete trust. Any warrior who questions her orders answers to me. Whispers spread. An Omega with command authority, with tactical control, with the Alpha's backing. It was unprecedented. It was necessary. And looking at the warriors' faces, at the mix of doubt and curiosity and grudging acceptance, I knew this was another test. Celine's execution proved traitors died. Now I had to prove competence lived. The crowd dispersed. Servants came to deal with the body, to scrub the blood from the platform. Theron and I walked back to the war room in silence. He looked at me. "Can you do this? Can you coordinate a defense with a damaged leg and wounds from tonight's fighting?" "I have done more with less." He nodded, turned to leave. I called after him. "Theron." He stopped. "We are going to lose warriors. Good ones. This strategy buys time, but it costs blood." "I know. Are you prepared for that? To sacrifice your people for a chance?" He turned to face me fully. "I am prepared to do whatever it takes to protect my son, my pack, my home." His eyes were hard, determined. That is the burden of command. Making choices where all outcomes involve loss, where victory is measured in how much you manage to save. I nodded. "Just wanted to make sure you understood the cost." "I have always understood the cost." He left. Cale remained. He looked at me for a long moment. "You did well tonight. Fighting, strategy, leadership." "Thank you. The warriors saw you kill 3 Northern scouts, saw you stand in a battle line beside veterans without flinching. They will follow your tactical direction now." He paused. "Even the ones who did not want an Omega in a position of authority. Because I proved myself. Because you bled beside them." He headed for the door, stopped. "One more thing. Theron is right to trust your tactical mind, but do not let that leg cost you in the fight ahead. Take care of yourself. We need you functional." Then he was gone. I stood alone in the war room, surrounded by maps, by markers showing enemy positions, by the weight of responsibility I had just accepted. War counselor. Temporary rank, temporary authority, but real enough for the next few days. Real enough to get people killed if I made mistakes. I pushed the doubt away, focused on the map, started planning our defense. 3 hours later, the fortifications were going up. Warriors worked through the night, digging trenches, setting spike walls, preparing defensive positions at the 3 main choke points into shadow territory. I stood on the command ridge with KL, watching the work, making adjustments. "Northern approach is too exposed," I said. "We need cover for the archers there." Kale shouted orders. Warriors scrambled to build wooden barriers. "Supply depot needs to be further back. If they overrun the first line, it becomes a liability." More orders, more movement. We worked through the night. As dawn broke, 600 Northern warriors appeared on the horizon. Aldrich's invasion force. They moved in formation, disciplined, professional. This was not a raiding party. This was an army. Kale looked at me. "Well, War Counselor, they are here. Your strategy is about to be tested." I watched the Northern forces deploy, saw their formation, their approach pattern, their tactical setup, saw the mistakes they were making. "They expect us to meet them in open battle," I said, "to defend our honor through direct combat." Kale nodded. "That is traditional pack warfare." "Good. Then we do not give them tradition." I turned to the runners. "Tell all units, do not engage. Let them advance to the first defensive line. Then hit them with everything we have and fall back. Make them fight for every position. Bleed them, exhaust them, but do not let them pin us down." The runners dispersed. Kale looked at me. "Unconventional. Effective." "I hope you are right." "So do I." The first wave hit an hour later. I watched from the command ridge. Beside me, Kale held the tactical map. Runners stood ready to carry orders to the front lines. 200 Northern warriors emerged from the tree line, moving in formation, shields up, spears forward, professional, disciplined. This was not a raiding party. This was a military assault. They advanced toward our first defensive position, a prepared trench line with spike walls and archer coverage. 30 shadow warriors held it. 30 against 200. Impossible odds, unless you change the game. "Archers," I called. "Range?" 100 meters in closing, the archer commander reported. "Hold. Let them commit." The Northern line advanced, confident. They could see our numbers, could calculate the mismatch. They thought this would be easy. 50 meters. Hold. 20 meters. Now full volley. 40 bows released as one. Arrows arced high, came down like steel rain. The Northern shield wall held against most of it, but some found gaps, found exposed limbs, found the vulnerable spaces where armor did not quite cover. Screams, warriors going down, the formation wavering. "Second volley," I ordered. Another rain of arrows, more hits, more casualties. The Northern line broke into a charge, trying to close the distance before the arrows could devastate them further. Exactly what I wanted. "Spike walls," I called to the runner. "Trigger them." The runner sprinted down the ridge, relayed the order. Hidden mechanisms activated. The spike walls that had looked climbable suddenly bristled with silver-tipped spears, angled outward, waiting. The charging Northern warriors hit them at full speed, impaled themselves on silver they could not see coming. More screams, the charge faltering, warriors trying to stop, to reverse, crashing into each other in confusion. Our front line engaged then. 30 shadow warriors surging forward, hitting the disorganized northern force while they were still tangled in the spikes, still trying to regroup. Close-quarters slaughter. Our warriors were fresh, prepared, fighting from advantageous positions. The northern force was bleeding, confused, caught in a kill box they had not seen coming. It lasted 10 minutes. Brutal, vicious, the wet sounds of combat carrying up to the command ridge. Then our forces withdrew, exactly as planned, fell back through prepared routes, left the northern warriors holding ground that cost them 40 dead. Our casualties, 3 wounded, none dead. Aldrich will adapt, Cale said quietly. That trick will not work twice. It does not need to. We have 3 more defensive lines, different tactics for each. The second wave came 2 hours later. This time they sent scouts first, probing for traps, finding the spike mechanisms, disabling them. Smart. But I had planned for smart. When their main force advanced, they found the spikes disabled, the path clear. They also found our second defensive line was further back than expected, with overlapping fields of fire, with prepared fallback positions, with burning pitch poured into channels that turned the narrow pass into a corridor of flame. They tried to push through, lost 60 warriors to fire and arrows before they withdrew. Our casualties, 5 wounded, 1 dead when a northern warrior broke through the line before being cut down. I knew his name, Garen, 32 years old, father of 2, had served the pack for 15 years. I wrote it down, added it to the list I was keeping. Every name, every loss, because that was the cost of command. The third wave came at dusk. Aldrich tried flanking, sent forces around to hit our positions from the side, found Cale waiting with a mobile unit. Warriors trained in rapid response. They hit the flanking force hard, drove them back, killed 20 before melting into the forest. Guerrilla tactics, my suggestion, Cale's execution. It worked. As the sun set, Aldrich called a halt. His forces camped outside our third defensive line, tending their wounded, burning their dead, taking stock of losses they had not expected. We had held. Day 1 belonged to Shadow Pack. I tallied the final count. 15 dead, 23 wounded, against northern losses of at least 120 confirmed kills and perhaps 80 wounded. The ratio was good. The names still hurt. That night, Theron found me on the command ridge. He looked exhausted. Blood covered his armor from a dozen small engagements throughout the day. The kind of blood that comes from leading from the front, from being where the fighting was thickest. I knew that kind of tired. The bone-deep weariness that comes not from physical exertion, but from carrying the weight of command, from making decisions that get people killed. Your strategy is working, he said. For now, Aldrich will adapt. Try something different tomorrow. Then we adapt too. He sat beside me on the stone wall, close enough that our shoulders almost touched, close enough that I could smell the wolf musk and sweat and blood that clung to him. We watched the enemy campfires in the distance, orange dots scattered across the dark landscape, each fire representing a unit of warriors, each unit preparing to try again tomorrow. How many did we lose today? I did not need to check my notes, had memorized every name. 15 dead, 23 wounded, though 3 of those will not fight again. Garen, Mikhail, Torsten, Eliana, Korvath, Dunstan, Elspeth, Fennec, Gregor, Helena, Ivek, Joran, Kalen, Lysara, Marcus. I paused. They were not just numbers. They were warriors who followed my tactical orders into danger, who trusted that I knew what I was doing. Theron was quiet for a long moment. You learned their names. I made a point to. Every warrior I send into danger. I know who they are leaving behind, what they were fighting for. His hand found mine in the darkness, gripped it tight. That is why you will be a good war counselor. I'm only temporary. When this is over, maybe, maybe not. He turned to look at me, silver eyes catching the moonlight. Before today, half the pack questioned whether an Omega could hold military authority, whether you deserved the position, whether I was compromised by feelings. He paused. Today you led warriors in battle, designed tactics that kept our casualties minimal while devastating theirs, stood on this ridge and made command decisions that saved lives. Tomorrow they will follow your orders without question, not because I commanded it, because you earned it. I looked away, uncomfortable with praise I was not sure I deserved. 15 warriors are still dead, and 120 northern warriors are dead. The ratio matters. In war, you save who you can, you minimize losses, but you cannot eliminate them. His voice dropped. I know it hurts. I know you are carrying their names, their faces, the knowledge that your orders put them in harm's way. He squeezed my hand. That is the burden of command, and you carry it like a veteran. We sat in silence, two soldiers who understood the cost in ways that could not be explained to anyone who had not paid it. After a while, Theron spoke again. I was wrong about you, at the beginning. When you hired me? Before that. When Kale first suggested you. He said he knew a veteran, someone with medical training and tactical knowledge who wanted a quiet position, someone who could handle a traumatized child because she understood trauma. He smiled slightly, bitter. I almost refused. Thought an Omega could not possibly have real military experience, that it was exaggeration, padding a resume. What changed your mind? Kale vouched for you, said he had served beside you at Black Ridge, that you had saved his unit, that you were one of the finest combat medics he had ever seen. A pause, and I was desperate. Griffin was dying inside. 7 nursemaids had failed. I needed someone different, someone who would not coddle him or pity him or try to replace his mother. So you took a chance on a broken Omega with a damaged leg. I took a chance on a decorated veteran who wanted a second act. He looked at me. Best decision I ever made. Even though it nearly got me executed, especially then, because it showed me who you really are. Someone who stays when running would be easier, who fights when surrender would be safer, who loves my son despite knowing it could cost everything. He raised our joined hands. Who stands beside me now, planning our defense, leading our warriors, sharing the burden of command? His voice went rough. I do not know what we are, Elara. I do not know what this becomes when the war is over, but I know I trust you, respect you, value you in ways that have nothing to do with rank or position. I met his eyes. We are soldiers, fighting the same war, protecting the same pack. That is enough for now. Is it? It has to be, because right now that is all we can afford to be. I pulled my hand free gently. Tomorrow, Aldrich will try new tactics. We need to be ready, need to plan contingencies, need to think 3 moves ahead. You are avoiding the question. I am prioritizing the mission, the way any good soldier would. He laughed, short, sharp. You are right, and that is exactly why this works. He stood, stretched, winced as old injuries protested. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be harder. He started to walk away, stopped, looked back. Thank you, Elara, for everything. For saving Asher during the attack, for designing a defense that gives us a chance, for carrying the burden of command even though you never asked for it, for being someone I can trust when the world is burning down. Then he was gone. I sat alone on the ridge, looking at the enemy campfires, thinking about the 15 warriors who had died today, about the names I would add to that list tomorrow, about the weight of command that Theron and I now shared, about what it meant to be trusted, respected, valued, not as an Omega, not as a female, but as a soldier, a tactician, a leader. I had spent 3 years trying to leave war behind, trying to be something softer, gentler, something that fit the role society expected. Now war had found me again, and I discovered I was good at it, better than I had been at peace. The thought should have troubled me, should have made me question what kind of person found purpose in violence. But sitting on that ridge, with enemy forces camped outside our borders, with my pack depending on my tactical mind to see them through, I felt something I had not felt in 3 years. Useful. Not despite being Omega. Not in spite of my damaged leg or my past or my lowborn status. Just useful, competent, necessary. Tomorrow I would send more warriors into danger. Tomorrow I would add more names to my list. Tomorrow I would make decisions that would haunt me for years. But tonight I had held. Tonight I had proven myself. Tonight, I had earned the right to stand beside an Alpha King, not as ornament or symbol, but as equal. That was worth the cost, worth the pain, worth everything that would come next. Because the war was far from over. Aldrich would not give up after 1 day of losses. And the real test was still ahead. But we had survived day 1, had held our ground, had proven that Shadowpack would not fall easily. And sometimes in war, survival was its own victory. I stood, gathered my notes, headed back to the war room. There was planning to do. Contingencies to prepare, warriors to brief. The burden of command did not rest, did not pause for sentiment or exhaustion or fear. It just demanded you carry it, 1 step at a time, 1 day at a time, 1 name at a time, until either you won or you joined the list yourself. Day 2 began with fire. Aldrich learned fast, adapted faster than I expected. At dawn, his forces hit 3 defensive positions simultaneously, coordinated assault, professional execution. They brought siege equipment, portable rams, scaling ladders, fire pots that turned our wooden barriers into kindling. The Northern Army had come prepared for war. We fought hard, held 2 positions, lost the 3rd when they overwhelmed our eastern flank with sheer numbers. Cost them 80 warriors, cost us 22. The names joined my list. every one of them carved into memory. By midday, we had withdrawn to the inner defensive ring, the castle walls, our last line before they could reach the civilians. Kale found me in the war room studying maps. They are regrouping, planning another push before nightfall. Numbers? 500 remaining combat effective. We killed over 100 yesterday and this morning, but they still outnumber us 2-1. I traced the defensive perimeter. How long can the walls hold? Against sustained assault? 3 days, maybe 4 if we are lucky. Not long enough. No, he sat heavily. We need reinforcements, allies, something to change the equation. I have been sending runners to every neighboring pack, Western, Coastal, Southern, asking for aid. And Western Alpha is sympathetic, promises to bring it to his council, but councils take time. Coastal Alpha wants to wait and see who wins. Southern Alpha refuses to get involved in what he calls a border dispute, so we are alone. For now. I stood, paced, thinking. There was a solution. Had to be. Some tactical advantage we had not exploited. Some weakness in Aldrich's position we could leverage. The problem was numbers. We could not win a straight fight, could not outlast a siege, could not break through to escape. Every conventional option ended in defeat, which meant we needed an unconventional option. What if we changed the nature of the conflict? I said slowly. Kale looked up. Explain. Right now this is military. Army versus army. Aldrich has more warriors, so he wins. But what if we make it political? Political how? I moved to the territorial map, pointed to the surrounding packs. Every pack is watching, waiting to see what happens. If Aldrich conquers us through legitimate military superiority, they accept it. That is pack law. The strong survive. But if we can prove he is not just strong, if we can prove he is dishonorable, that he violated pack law, that he conspired with internal traitors, that this is not conquest but assassination, then the other packs have justification to intervene. Exactly. They can act without looking weak, can say they are defending pack law, not just helping a losing ally. How do we prove dishonor? The scout we captured, the correspondence with Celine, the poisoning of Asher, all evidence that Aldrich did not just invade, he orchestrated internal collapse first. Kale nodded slowly. We have the evidence, but getting other packs to care, we make them care. We put it in front of them publicly, force them to choose sides. A war council, neutral ground, all territorial alphas. Aldrich will never agree to that. He will if we offer him something he wants. What does he want? Vindication, proof that he is not the aggressor, that we are the problem. I smiled without humor. We challenge him publicly. Offer to submit to neutral judgment, put our evidence against his, let the alphas decide who is right. That is a huge risk. If they side with him, then we lose nothing we were not already losing. But if they side with us, or even just stay neutral, Aldrich loses his justification, loses political support, becomes isolated. Kale considered. It could work, if we present it right, if we have support going in. Then we make sure we have support. I turned to the map. Who do we trust among the alphas? Western Alpha Garrett. He is reform-minded, has Omega Council members, will be sympathetic to our position. Good, who else? Coastal Alpha Rhiannon, neutral but fair, will judge based on evidence, not politics. Anyone else? Southern Alpha Marcus is traditionalist, will side with Aldrich unless we give him reason not to. What about Eastern Pack? Eastern Alpha Dorian, traditionalist, ambitious, has been quiet during this conflict. Too quiet? Maybe. I studied the map. Something was wrong. Eastern Pack shared our northern border, had clear sightlines to the conflict, should have taken a position by now. Send scouts, eastern border. I want to know what Dorian is doing. Done. And draft a message to Aldrich. Formal challenge, request for neutral counsel to judge the legitimacy of this conflict. Make it sound like we are desperate, like we are looking for a way to surrender with honor. Are we? No, but I want him to think so. Kale left to carry out the orders. I stayed in the war room, studied the maps, looked for contingencies, for backup plans if the political strategy failed, found none that did not end in total defeat. So the political strategy had to work. The scouts returned 3 hours later. Their report made my blood run cold. Eastern Pack was mobilizing, 200 warriors in full battle gear, moving toward our position. At first, I allowed myself hope. Reinforcements. Dorian had decided to support us. Then the scout continued. They are positioning on our eastern flank, coordinating with northern forces. Their advanced scouts met with Aldrich's commanders this morning, shared intelligence, discussed joint tactical operations. The scout pulled out a map, marked positions. They are not reinforcing us. They are preparing a pincer movement. Northern forces hit from the north, Eastern forces hit from the east. We get caught between them. How long until they are in position? 6 hours, maybe 8. I looked at the tactical display, saw it clearly, the kill box they were creating. Northern Pack attacks from established positions. We defend, commit our reserves. Then Eastern Pack hits our exposed flank. We collapse, get overrun. Classic hammer and anvil. Effective, brutal, unstoppable with our current numbers. We now faced 800 warriors with our 370 remaining. The math was simple, terminal. The room went silent. Kale spoke first. We cannot hold against joint assault. Our defensive positions were designed for single vector attack. If they hit us from 2 sides simultaneously, he did not finish, did not need to. How many casualties to break through, I asked. To the inner keep? 90% of our forces, and we would have maybe 50 warriors left to hold the castle. Which means civilians get slaughtered when the walls fall. Theron appeared in this doorway. He had heard. His face was carved from stone. Dorian. He spoke the name like a curse. I should have seen this coming. Should have known he would not stay neutral. Why, I asked. What does he gain? Everything. Theron moved to the territorial map, traced boundaries with his finger. Shadow Pack controls the river valley, the trade routes, the richest farmland in 3 territories. If Aldrich conquers us, he does not keep it all. He negotiates, offers Dorian a share in exchange for military support. Eastern Pack gets territory without risking a solo invasion. Northern Pack gets conquest without fighting alone. Both profit. And we get crushed between them. Yes. I studied the map, the positions, the timing, the inevitable mathematics of defeat, unless we change the equation. How? Kale asked. We cannot fight 800 warriors. We barely held against 600. We do not fight them militarily. We fight them politically. I turned to Theron. Dorian is making a mistake. He thinks joining the winning side is safe, but he is creating precedent that threatens every pack in the territories. Explain. If 2 packs can team up, fabricate justification, invade a neighbor and split the territory, then no pack is safe. Western Pack watches us fall and thinks, we could be next. Coastal Pack, Southern Pack, anyone weaker than a coordinated alliance. Theron saw it. Collective security. Every alpha has incentive to stop this because allowing it threatens them. Exactly. We make this bigger than Shadow Pack survival. We make it about territorial stability. We already sent messages requesting the council, but that was before Eastern Pack joined. Now it looks hopeless. Why would other alphas risk supporting obvious losers? Because losing is not obvious if we can hold long enough for the council to convene. Can we? I looked at the defensive maps, ran calculations. 3 days. If we pull back to absolute inner perimeter, abandon outer walls, concentrate everything on the keep itself, sacrifice space for time. Kale shook his head. 3 days of sustained assault against 800 warriors? We will lose 3/4 of our forces. But the civilians survive, and we buy time for politics to work. If politics works, if the council sides with us, if other packs actually intervene, a lot of ifs. Better than the certainty of total defeat. Theron looked at me, really looked, the way he had in the execution chamber, seeing past the Omega to the soldier, the tactician, the partner. You are asking me to sacrifice most of our warriors on a political gamble. I am asking you to give us the only chance we have. He turned to Kale. Pull everyone back to the keep, fortify, prepare for siege. We hold for 3 days. Then to me. Make the politics work. That is your battlefield. I will handle the military one. I will not let you down. I know. He touched my face briefly. A moment of intimacy in the middle of war. We have survived worse. Have we? He smiled without humor. The execution chamber, that was worse. We survived that together. Then we will survive this. I hoped I was right. The message went out that night. Formal request for territorial council. Neutral ground. All alphas invited. Subject. Alleged conspiracy to destabilize and conquer Shadow Pack through coordinated internal sabotage and external invasion. Evidence to be presented. Neutral judgment requested. Aldrich's response came at dawn. He agreed. Too easily. Which meant he thought he could win a political fight as easily as a military one. The council was set for 3 days hence, long enough for alphas to travel, short enough that our defenses might hold. Barely. Those 3 days were brutal. Aldrich and Dorian launched coordinated probing attacks, testing our defenses, forcing us to expend resources, wearing us down. We lost ground, lost warriors, lost hope. By the time the council date arrived, we were down to 340 effective fighters, surrounded, running low on arrows and supplies. One more major assault would break us. But the council bought us time, bought us a chance. I traveled to the neutral ground with Theron and KL, 20 warriors as escort, the minimum required for an alpha. Left the castle under Elder Rowan's command, trusted her to hold if negotiations failed. The neutral ground was a sacred meadow, ancient stone circle, treaty site for centuries. 6 alphas were already present when we arrived. Aldrich of Northern Pack, tall, scarred, silver hair despite being only 40, eyes like winter ice. He wore full battle regalia, wanted everyone to see the warrior conquering shadow territory. Dorian of Eastern Pack, younger, ambitious, immaculately dressed. Politician more than fighter. He stood beside Aldrich, alliance clear. Garrett of Western Pack, older, thoughtful, reform-minded. He nodded to Theron, acknowledgement of old friendship. Rhiannon of Coastal Pack, middle-aged, sharp eyes, reputation for fairness. She watched everything, judged nothing yet. Marcus of Southern Pack, traditionalist, conservative, unmoved by political winds. He looked bored. And Elder Rowan as 7th vote, representing Shadow Pack interests. 7 alphas would judge. We needed 4 votes to win. Had 1 guaranteed, Elder Rowan. Probably 1 more, Garrett. Needed 2 from Rhiannon, Marcus, or convince Aldrich and Dorian to vote against themselves. Impossible, unless I changed their incentives. The council opened with formal declarations. Aldrich spoke first. Shadow Pack harbors traitors, conspired with my enemies, sheltered criminals. When I demanded justice, they refused. This invasion is legitimate enforcement of Pack law. Theron responded. Northern Pack conspired with Shadow Pack traitors to poison my heir, frame an innocent veteran, and create conditions for invasion. This is not enforcement. This is conquest through deception. Back and forth, arguments and counter-arguments. Then came evidence. Aldrich presented testimony from his scouts, claims that Shadow Pack had been conducting raids into Northern Territory, provoking conflict. All lies, but well-documented lies. Theron presented the captured scout, the correspondence with Celine, the poison evidence. All true, but circumstantial without corroboration. The alphas listened, weighed, showed nothing. Then Rhiannon spoke. I have a question for War Counselor Alara. All eyes turned to me. You were sentenced to execution for treason, then pardoned, then appointed to military command. That is unusual. Explain. I stood. I was framed by Beta Corvus and Lady Celine working with Northern Pack operatives. They planted evidence, bribed witnesses, attempted to execute me to remove an obstacle to their plan. Aldrich interrupted. Convenient story. Dead conspirators cannot defend themselves. The scout is not dead, he testified. Confirmed the conspiracy. Under torture, such testimony is worthless. He was offered mercy for cooperation. He chose to speak. Rhiannon raised a hand. The question stands. Why appoint a disgraced Omega to War Counselor? Because disgrace was manufactured. Because she is a decorated veteran with 12 years combat experience. Because she designed the defensive strategy that has held against overwhelming odds for 3 days. I met Rhiannon's eyes. And because competence matters more than birth rank. Murmurs from the assembled alphas. Marcus spoke for the first time. An Omega War Counselor. This is why your pack is weak, why you cannot hold against proper military force. My pack held against 600 Northern warriors for 3 days, despite being outnumbered and outpositioned. That is not weakness. That is tactical excellence. Achieved through what? Tricks? Deception? Achieved through understanding that war is not just about strength. It is about strategy, logistics, morale, terrain, timing. I stepped forward. Alpha Aldrich has more warriors, but I have better tactics. He has numbers. I have position. He has aggression. I have patience. Aldrich smiled coldly. Pretty words, but you are still losing. Am I? I looked around the circle. 3 days ago, Aldrich invaded with 600 warriors. Today, he has 500. He has lost 1/6 of his force and holds no territory, no strategic positions, no tangible gains. Meanwhile, Shadow Pack has lost ground but preserved our core strength, evacuated civilians, maintained supply lines, and bought time for this council to convene. Who is winning? The side that spent blood for nothing? Or the side that traded space for time? Silence. Garrett leaned forward. You are proposing that defensive warfare is victory? I am proposing that not losing is sometimes the same as winning, especially when your opponent has a timeline and you do not. Aldrich's jaw tightened. Dorian spoke up. This is sophistry. Military victory requires conquest, requires broken enemies and claimed territory. Does it? I turned to him. Alpha Dorian, you joined this conflict yesterday. Why? To support legitimate enforcement of Pack law. Or to claim a share of Shadow Pack territory when Aldrich wins? His eyes narrowed. Careful, Omega. It is a fair question. One every alpha here should consider. If Aldrich wins, what happens to Shadow Territory? Aldrich answered, "It will be absorbed into Northern Pack, proper leadership restored. And Eastern Pack?" Dorian shifted. "We have negotiated an alliance, trade agreements, border adjustments, so you profit from conquest, both of you. That is pack law, spoils to the victor." I looked at Garrett, at Rhiannon, at Marcus. And what precedent does that set? That any two packs can team up, fabricate justification, invade a neighbor, split the territory. Garrett saw it. You are arguing collective security, that allowing coordinated conquest threatens all packs. I am arguing that what happens to Shadow Pack today happens to Western Pack tomorrow, Coastal Pack next week, Southern Pack next month. Marcus scoffed. Southern Pack is strong, no one would dare. Aldrich has 600 warriors. Dorian has 200. Together 800. How many do you have, Alpha Marcus? He went silent. 500. I knew from intelligence reports. Strong alone, vulnerable to coordinated assault. Rhiannon spoke quietly. She makes a point. This precedent could destabilize the territories. Aldrich slammed his fist on the stone. There is no precedent. Shadow Pack conspired with my enemies, harbored traitors, refused justice. I am enforcing pack law. Then prove it. Everyone looked at me. Prove that this is legitimate enforcement. Prove your tactical superiority. Prove you are right. How? War game. You and me. Hypothetical scenario. Neutral judges. Whoever has better strategy wins the argument. Aldrich laughed. You challenge me to tactical contest? I challenge you to prove you are the superior military mind. If you win, these alphas know your invasion is backed by competence. If I win, they know you are just using strength to cover for weakness. His eyes glittered. What are the stakes? If you win, Shadow Pack surrenders. I submit myself for execution. The war ends. And if you win? You withdraw. Pay reparations. Recognize Shadow Pack sovereignty. Aldrich considered, then nodded. Agreed. Let us see if Omegatrix can match Alpha strategy. The war game was set up on a large tactical map. Hypothetical scenario, defending a mountain pass against superior force, deliberately mirrored our real situation. The rules were clear. Both sides would present complete battle plans. Judges would score based on tactical soundness, resource efficiency, probable casualties, and likelihood of achieving strategic objectives. Winner determined by majority vote of neutral alphas. Aldrich went first. He approached the map with confidence, pointed to key positions. The scenario: defending force of 400 holds mountain pass. Attacking force of 800 approaches. Terrain favors defense, but attackers have numbers. He traced attack vectors. My strategy is direct assault. 3-pronged advance. Primary force hits the center defensive position with overwhelming numbers. Secondary forces flank left and right simultaneously. Defenders must choose, reinforce center and lose flanks, or split forces and weaken everywhere. He placed markers showing troop deployments. Acceptable casualty ratio, 3 attackers for every defender. At 400 defenders, I lose 1,200 warriors total. But I break through in 6 hours, secure the pass, win decisively. Aldrich looked at the assembled alphas. This is alpha warfare. Strength, aggression, willingness to pay the price of victory. The strong survive, the weak fall. That is pack law. Marcus nodded approvingly. Dorian smiled. Traditional alphas respected the approach. Garrett looked thoughtful. Rhiannon showed nothing. My turn. I approached the map, studied it, let them wait. Then spoke. Alpha Aldrich's plan achieves tactical victory. He is correct. With those numbers and that approach, he breaks through. But let us examine the cost. I pointed to his casualty projections. 1,200 dead. From an 800 warrior force. That is not 3-to-1 ratio. That is losing more warriors than you started with because your casualties include wounded who die later, logistics personnel, scouts lost in preliminary operations. Your actual combat effective force after victory, maybe 200 warriors, holding a pass against counterattack, against guerrilla raids, against enemies who now know your tactics. I place different markers. My strategy: layered defense in depth. First line engages, inflicts casualties, withdraws. Second line repeats. Third line repeats. Never allow decisive engagement. Never give attackers the set-piece battle they want. Use terrain. Use prepared positions. Use mobility. Aldrich interrupted. Coward tactics. You are describing losing slowly. I am describing making victory unsustainable. Your plan requires you to hold the pass after taking it, to garrison it, To defend supply lines back to your territory. To maintain occupation. I traced those supply lines on the map. 50 kilometers through hostile territory, vulnerable to raids, requiring constant patrols, drawing warriors away from the pass itself. Meanwhile, my forces, intact because I avoided decisive engagement, conduct guerrilla operations. Hit your supply convoys, ambush your patrols. Make every day of occupation cost you 3 more warriors. How long before you cannot hold the pass anymore? How long before the victory becomes unsustainable? Garrett leaned forward. You are proposing that not winning the battle is actually winning the war. I am proposing that tactical victory without strategic sustainability is just expensive defeat delayed. I turned to Rhiannon. The question is not, can Aldrich take the pass? Obviously he can with those numbers. The question is, should he? Is the pass worth the price? Does holding it advance his strategic position or commit him to endless occupation warfare? Rhiannon studied both plans. Alpha Aldrich, after you take the pass at the cost of 1,200 warriors, then what? I hold it. Secure the territory. Absorb the defeated pack's lands. And if the defeated pack does not accept defeat, if they continue resistance, then I crush them. With 200 warriors, against an intact guerrilla force operating from home territory? Aldrich's jaw tightened. I call reinforcements. From where? Your home territory is 50 kilometers away, through hostile terrain, with every supply convoy vulnerable to ambush. That is acceptable risk. Rhiannon turned to me. War counselor, your plan avoids decisive defeat, but it also avoids decisive victory. You do not win the pass. Correct. I lose the pass. But I keep my army intact. I make occupation untenable. I force my enemy to choose between abandoning their expensive victory or pouring more resources into holding it. And what do you gain? Time, morale, the knowledge that my enemy is bleeding themselves trying to hold what they took. Eventually, they withdraw or they run out of warriors trying to hold it. Either way, I win strategically, even though I lost tactically. Marcus scoffed. This is Omega logic. Real alphas fight for victory. Real alphas fight for strategic objectives. Taking territory is not victory if you cannot hold it. The judges deliberated. I watched their faces, tried to read the decision. Garrett would vote for my plan. He understood modern warfare, understood that strength alone did not guarantee success. Elder Rowan would vote for my plan, required by her position. Marcus would vote for Aldrich, traditional superiority, old ways. Dorian would vote for Aldrich, alliance, self-interest. Rhiannon was the swing vote. She studied both plans for what felt like forever, then spoke. This is not an easy judgment. Both plans have merit. Both achieve their stated objectives. Alpha Aldrich's plan is tactically sound, direct, decisive. It wins the battle through superior force properly applied. War Counselor Alara's plan is strategically sound, sustainable, patient. It wins the war by making victory too expensive to maintain. She paused. In a hypothetical scenario, removed from real-world constraints, I judge Aldrich's plan militarily superior. It achieves the tactical objective faster and more completely. But we do not live in hypothetical scenarios. We live in the real world where resources matter, where political will matters, where long-term consequences matter, where an army that loses 1,200 warriors to take one pass becomes vulnerable everywhere else. She looked at both of us. In the real world, I judge Alara's plan strategically superior, because sustainable strategy beats unsustainable tactics every time. Vote Alara. The silence was absolute. 3 votes to 2 in my favor. The council had ruled. Aldrich's face went purple. This is absurd. You rule that losing slowly is better than winning quickly? I rule that sustainable strategy beats unsustainable tactics. Rhiannon stood. Shadowpack has proven their case. This invasion is not justified enforcement. It is opportunistic conquest. The Council recognizes Shadowpack's sovereignty. Alpha Aldrich, you are ordered to withdraw, pay reparations, respect territorial boundaries. Aldrich stood abruptly. I do not recognize this judgment. My warriors did not bleed for 3 days so that Omega sophistry could steal victory. You agreed to the terms. You agreed to abide by neutral judgment. I agreed before I knew the Council would favor weakness over strength. He turned to his warriors. We continue the assault. We finish this war. Garrett stood. If you continue, Western Pack will intervene on Shadowpack's behalf. Rhiannon joined him, as will Coastal Pack. Aldrich looked at them. You would fight me over this? We would enforce Council judgment. That is Pack law. The standoff held. Then something unexpected happened. A group of northern warriors broke from Aldrich's ranks, 80 of them, led by a young female alpha. They crossed to stand beside us. The female spoke. "Father, this war is unjust. You conspired with traitors. You poisoned a child. You dishonored our pack." Aldrich stared. "Seraphine, the council has ruled. You lost the war game. You have no justification. I command you. You command nothing." She drew her blade. "I challenge you for leadership of Northern Pack on grounds that you are unfit to lead." The meadow erupted. An alpha challenge, daughter against father. Pack law required it be honored. Aldrich had two choices: accept the challenge or lose face completely. He drew his blade. "Very well, daughter. If you want to rule, take it from me." They fought in the center of the stone circle, witnessed by all the alphas, by both armies, by hundreds of warriors who would carry this story for generations. Father and daughter. Experience against youth. Ruthlessness against idealism. Traditional strength against reformed tactics. Aldrich attacked first. Massive overhand strike meant to end it quickly. Decades of warfare behind the blow. Seraphine sidestepped, let the blade pass, did not counter, just evaded. Aldrich recovered, came again. Horizontal slash, then vertical, then thrust. Professional combinations, each strike powerful enough to kill. Seraphine defended, parried, redirected, never standing still, never giving him a target. She was faster, he was stronger, the balance held. First blood went to Aldrich. A slash across Seraphine's shoulder. She gasped, kept moving. Second blood went to Seraphine. A cut along Aldrich's ribs, shallow but bleeding. They circled, breathing hard, reassessing. Aldrich changed tactics, stopped trying to overpower, started trying to corner, used his size to limit her mobility, drive her toward the stone wall. Seraphine recognized the trap, moved laterally, maintained distance, refused to be boxed in. The fight settled into rhythm. Attack and defense, strike and counter, neither gaining decisive advantage. 5 minutes, 10, 15. Warriors watched in absolute silence. This was alpha combat, sacred, final. Aldrich began to tire. Age and old wounds taking toll, his breathing labored, movement slowing fractionally. Seraphine saw it, pressed the advantage, increased tempo, forced him to defend faster than he wanted. Aldrich made his mistake at minute 17. He overextended on a lunge, committed too much weight forward, left his back leg planted. Seraphine saw the opening, took it without hesitation. She feinted high, drew his blade up to defend his head, then dropped low, spun, brought her blade across in a horizontal slash at knee level. The blade bit deep into his hamstring, severed the tendon. Aldrich's leg gave out. He crashed to his knees, blade falling from suddenly nerveless fingers. Seraphine was on him before he could recover. Kicked his blade away, put her own blade to his throat. The fight was over. "Yield," she commanded. Aldrich stared up at his daughter, blood pouring from his leg, pride and fury and disbelief warring in his eyes. "Kill me." "No." Seraphine's voice was steady, controlled. She was not enjoying this, was not glorying in victory, was just doing what had to be done. "You will live to see your war fail, to see Omega leadership proven, to see everything you believed proven wrong. That is worse than death." She looked past him to the assembled alphas, to the hundreds of warriors watching. "I am Seraphine, alpha of Northern Pack by right of challenge. I withdraw our forces from this unjust invasion. I recognize Shadow Pack sovereignty. I will pay reparations as the council demanded." Her voice strengthened. This war was built on lies, on conspiracy with traitors, on poisoning a child to create conditions for conquest. That is not alpha strength, that is cowardice. She looked down at her father. "You dishonored our pack, betrayed everything warriors are supposed to stand for. You deserve exile. You deserve to live knowing you destroyed your own legacy." To the guards. "Take him. Strip his rank, escort him to the border. He has 3 days to leave these territories. If he returns, he dies." Guards moved forward, lifted Aldrich. He did not resist, just stared at his daughter with eyes full of hate. "You will regret this. The old ways are not so easily destroyed." "Watch me." They dragged him away. Aldrich, once alpha of Northern Pack, once commander of 600 warriors, once the most feared military leader in 3 territories, now broken, exiled, defeated by his own daughter in front of everyone who had followed him. The symbolism was not lost on anyone. Old ways falling, new generation rising, change inevitable. The war was over. We had won. Not through military might, not through superior force. Through tactics, through politics, through proving competence mattered more than strength. The aftermath took weeks. Northern Pack withdrew, paid reparations that would feed Shadow Pack through winter. Eastern Pack withdrew, Dorian faced no consequences but lost political capital, became isolated, diminished. The council ruling set precedent. Coordinated conquest was now forbidden. Smaller packs were protected. Shadow Pack had not just survived, we had changed the rules. 5 years later, I stood in the war room watching Asher train in the courtyard below. He was 9 years old now, growing into his alpha heritage with a speed that both thrilled and terrified me. Fast, smart, tactical, everything Theron and I had hoped he would become, but also gentle, thoughtful, questioning, everything Lyanna's memory had taught him to be. He sparred with young warriors twice his age, held his own not through strength but through reading their movements, anticipating, countering, thinking 3 steps ahead. My son, not by blood but by every measure that mattered. Theron stood beside me at the window, gray threading his temples now, old war wounds making him stiffen on cold mornings, but still strong, still commanding, still the alpha who had almost killed me and instead chose to love me. He is good, Theron said quietly. You taught him well. We taught him well. I smiled. After 5 years of marriage, we still had these moments, still remembered to give each other credit, still worked as partners. The mating ceremony had been simple. Small gathering 6 months after the war ended, just close family and allies. Asher had stood between us throughout, holding both our hands, his face serious and proud. The pack had mostly accepted it by then. Hard to argue with results. Hard to claim Omega weakness when that Omega had designed the defense that saved them all. Not everyone approved. Some traditionalists left, joined other packs, but more arrived to replace them. Refugees from traditionalist territories seeking what Shadow Pack offered. Freedom, opportunity, the radical idea that competence mattered more than birth. 5 years since the execution chamber, 5 years since Northern invasion, 5 years of hard-won peace. The territories had changed, dramatically. Western Pack under Garrett adopted full reforms, Omega auxiliary units serving alongside warriors, Omega council members with real authority, training programs that judged candidates by skill instead of rank. Coastal Pack under Rhiannon implemented partial reforms, Omega advisors, limited leadership positions, slower progress but real movement. Northern Pack under Seraphine went further than anyone. She used her father's failure as proof that old ways failed, built progressive structures that made Shadow Pack look conservative by comparison. Even Southern Pack grudgingly adopted minor changes. Not from ideology, but from necessity. Too many Omegas fleeing to reform territories. Demographics shifting, population bleeding away. Marcus resisted, but reality imposed. Hard to maintain traditional hierarchy when half your Omega population lived elsewhere. Eastern Pack under Dorian made token reforms, mostly symbolic, but symbols mattered, showed which way the wind blew. The world was changing, and we had been the catalyst. Not through conquest, not through forcing compliance, but through proving an alternative worked better. Through surviving when we should have died, through winning when we should have lost, through demonstrating that tactical competence beat traditional strength. Other packs saw, learned, adapted. Not all of them, not quickly, but enough. The tide had turned. Theron touched my shoulder. Council meeting in an hour. Eastern border situation. Dorian complaining about refugee flow again? Always. Let him complain. People vote with their feet. We headed to the council chamber, found Dorian waiting with his delegation, looking frustrated and diminished. 5 years had not been kind to Eastern Pack. Population down 20%. Economy struggling. Warriors leaving for packs that offered more opportunity. All self-inflicted, all avoidable if Dorian had adapted instead of clinging to tradition. Alpha Theron, War Counselor Alara. Dorian nodded stiffly. Still refused to call me Luna. His small rebellion. We need to discuss the refugee situation. What about it? Theron asked. 83 of my pack members have fled to Shadow territory in the past year. You are stealing my population. We are accepting refugees who request asylum. Different thing. You are running propaganda campaigns, making Omegas think they have rights, destabilizing traditional pack structures across the territories. I leaned forward. Alpha Dorian. Your pack members flee because they want what we offer, not propaganda, reality. Freedom to develop their skills, opportunity for advancement, respect regardless of birth rank. If you want them to stay, offer them reasons to stay. Never. The traditional hierarchy exists for a reason. Omegas serve, betas support, alphas lead. That is pack law. That is your interpretation of pack law. Ours is different, and people are choosing ours. This cannot continue. You are destroying pack stability. We are creating new stability, better stability, built on competence instead of accident of birth. Dorian glared but had no counter-argument. Economics spoke louder than ideology. His pack was shrinking. Ours was growing. Simple as that. Theron spoke. We are not going to turn away refugees to make you comfortable. If you want change, make it yourself. Dorian glared, but left without further argument. When he was gone, Theron sighed. He will challenge me eventually. Try to reclaim lost status through combat. Let him. You are confident? In you? Always. He smiled. We had come far. From execution chamber to partnership. From condemned Omega to war counselor to Luna. The mating ceremony had happened quietly. 6 months after the war, small gathering, family and close allies. Asher had stood between us throughout, holding both our hands, serious and proud. Do you know what this means? It means we are pack now, real pack, you and me and Mama. Exactly right. Now 10 years later, Asher was 24. Ready for alpha responsibilities. Theron was aging, gray hair, old war wounds aching, ready to step back. We stood in the throne room as Asher knelt before Elder Rowan. She placed the alpha crown on his head. Rise, Alpha Asher of Shadow Pack. The pack roared approval. My son. Not by blood, but by choice, by love, by everything that mattered. Now Alpha, continuing the work we started, expanding it, building on the foundation. Beside him stood Ellery, Seraphine's daughter, now 20, serving as his chief tactical advisor. Full circle. The refugee child we had saved now helping lead reform territories. After the ceremony, our family gathered privately. Just the 3 of us, as we had done for 20 years. How does it feel? I asked. Terrifying. Right. Asher looked at Theron. You built something extraordinary. We built something, all of us. Theron turned to me. Now we pass it to the next generation. Let them build on it. Make it theirs. What will you do? I smiled. Retire again. Maybe this time it will stick. Asher laughed. You said that 5 years ago, 10 years ago. You keep getting pulled back because war keeps finding us. Maybe peace will stick this time. Maybe. We stood on the castle walls, looking out at the territories. 20 years since the execution chamber. 20 years since a 4-year-old called me Mama and changed everything. The memorial ceremony happened at dawn. Annual tradition. The day of choosing. Hundreds gathered. Veterans. Reformed pack members. Young wolves who grew up in the new world. I addressed them from the platform. 20 years ago, I was condemned to die. Not for crimes, but for threatening tradition. For being what the old order could not accept. I lived because people chose courage over comfort, chose change over certainty, chose to believe Omega could be more. Your generation inherits that choice. Make it every day. Fight for what matters. Protect the vulnerable. Lead with strength and wisdom. Remember, the finest warriors win without destroying what they fight for. The pack roared. Asher spoke next. My mother Liana watches from the stars. My mother Alara stands beside me. Both gave me everything I am. One taught me gentleness through memory. One taught me strength through example. I lead because they showed me leadership is service, because they proved love builds stronger bonds than fear. Ellery stood with him, her generation ready, trained, prepared to continue the work. 5 packs reformed now, 3 traditional holdouts. But even the holdouts felt pressure. Their populations demanding change, their Omegas fleeing to better lives. The tide had turned, could not be reversed. That evening, Theron and I sat in our chambers. 20 years, he said. We made it. We made it. Any regrets? That we could not save more. That change came slower than I wanted. That warriors still died for progress. He nodded. Same. But look what we built. He gestured to the window, to the territories beyond. Omegas in leadership, reformed packs thriving, next generation ready, peace holding. We did that. You and me and Asher, against impossible odds. I leaned against him. Was it worth it? The execution chamber, the war, the years of struggle. Every second. He kissed my temple. You changed everything, Alara. Not just for Shadow Pack, for all the territories, for every Omega who thought they had to accept limitation. We changed it together. No, you started it. When you refused to run, when you stood trial with dignity, when you fought beside warriors and proved competence. I was just the spark. You built the fire. We sat in comfortable silence. 2 veterans, 2 leaders, 2 people who found each other in the darkest moment and built something worth building. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, next year new struggles. But tonight we had peace, had family, had the satisfaction of work well done. The Alpha King had ordered my death, but his son called me mother, and in that single word, spoken by a terrified child who knew only his heart, the world shifted. Chains fell. A king remembered humanity. A pack began healing. Territories transformed. All because love spoke louder than law. Because courage mattered more than tradition. Because one Omega refused to accept that birth determined worth. 20 years later, the revolution continued, led by the next generation. Built on the foundation we laid, expanding into territories we never dreamed possible. And every year on this day we remembered the execution chamber, remembered the choice, remembered that sometimes the most powerful thing in the world is refusing to give up, is fighting for what matters even when the cost seems too high, is choosing family over fear, choosing truth over convenience, choosing to believe that change is possible if you are brave enough to demand it. That was our legacy. Not victory in war, not political success, not even survival, but the proof that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they refused to accept limitation, when they fought for each other, when they chose love fierce enough to change the world. The Alpha King had ordered my death, but his pup called me mother, and together we built something worth dying for, something worth living for, something that would outlast us both. A world where Omegas lead, where competence matters more than birth, where family is chosen, not assigned, where warriors fight with wisdom, not just strength. That was the world we made. And watching Asher lead it forward, watching Ellery stand beside him, watching the next generation take our dream and make it bigger, I knew we had succeeded. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough to change everything that mattered. Enough to prove that revolution does not require armies, just courage and love, and the absolute refusal to accept that this is as good as it gets. 20 years since the blade was at my throat. 20 years since I heard a small voice that shattered everything. Mama. That single word had been the spark. We had been the fire, and the warmth of it would burn for generations. That was enough. That was everything.